All right, welcome everybody to week 8, day 1. We are going to be probably finishing up fallacies today, and I'll be giving you a fallacy scavenger hunt, which is always kind of fun. So, last time we talked about things like strawman, where you make your opponent's argument sound stupid. You rephrase their argument in such a way that it's not actually what they said. The most common way of doing that is by dropping qualifier statements. So, for example, if you say that I think we should let some people out of prison that don't deserve to be there, somebody will straw man by saying, "You want to release everyone from prison? How dare you? There are murderers that will murder." And you're like, "No, I didn't say all. I said some." Or vice versa. That subtlety and nuance, which is something I'm really big on, comes from things like qualifying statements, like some, none, all, sometimes, rarely, often, usually, that kind of give you kind of a range of nuance that you're talking about, and idiots on the internet will typically drop those and turn your statement into an all or nothing fallacy. So an all or nothing fallacy, by the way, is when something must all 100% be true or all 100% be bad. And that relates, we'll probably talk about that when we get to cognitive biases. It stems from a tendency in our brains to engage in what's called black and white thinking, where either somebody's all good or somebody's all evil. Cancel culture ties into that a lot, right? If you did something stupid 5 years ago, then that makes you a horrible person, right? It just disqualifies you from life. And the reality of this situation is that most people are a mix of good and evil and have done good things and bad things, and you kind of have to weigh the balance of it. But cancel culture is all about just like digging through people's old, not in all cases. Like in some cases, like I think the cancellation of Harvey Weinstein, 100% justified, or Bill Cosby or something like that, right? But the way that things are going these days, with like people just digging through people's Twitter posts from 20 years ago and whatever, yeah. So today we're going to be talking about ad hominem and a few more fallacies. Anyone have any comments to make about cancel culture? Because I know some people like cancel culture, some people don't like cancel culture. Give me your thoughts on Discord. I've already kind of given you my personal take on it, which is that sometimes I think it's justified to cancel people, but a lot of times it just seems to be cherry picking, right? Like just trying to find the worst thing that somebody's ever did, And fortunately, when I was a teenager, we didn't have Facebook, so these things weren't preserved forever on the internet, right? I once posted on Facebook, "Hey, I found some photographs from high school," and I kind of asked some of my friends, my high school friends, like, "Hey, you want me to post some of these, like photo, like not horrible stuff, like people like partying or whatever, just like, the formal photos you take at like homecoming or something like that." And this one friend of mine who's a reporter, he's like, "Don't you dare!" I'm like, all right, fair enough. He's just like, just leave the past in the past. Do not post that stuff on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's fair enough. It's weird at times that a lot of wrong can be called out. Yeah. Usually against cancel culture because most of the time it's unnecessary, but obviously there's times when there's something that needs to be done. It's pretty childish. Cancel culture. Normally, whenever cancel culture starts, it just becomes toxic and no longer focuses on the actual wrongdoings of people. I don't like cancel culture, but sometimes needs to happen. Cancel culture can bring out the good if it's executed correctly and justifiably. Yeah, I think to me it's like how much good does somebody have to do to negate an act of evil? Right? Maybe you can give me your thoughts on that. Like, somebody said something stupid on Twitter, when they were a teenager. How much of their life since then makes up for that? Give me your thoughts, right? Or should they just be permanently banned from a job ever, right? Like if you did something dumb as a teenager, should you just be for the rest of your life a pariah, outcast, never working again? I don't know. You tell me. I'm giving you guys the hard questions. I don't have any answers for you. You know, like how much good, like if you go to, you know, some conflict zone and help the Red Cross for 10 years, does that make up for, you know, saying something stupid on Twitter? I don't know. You get angry and use some bad words, and somebody records it, like, you have to go clear mines for a year. Like, I don't know. And that's to me, like, what the big question is. Like, as long as they apologize and show they've changed for the better. Because it's like we got the cancel process down. I think it's the forgiveness side that doesn't really exist. You know what I mean? And like if you look at like Kevin Spacey, who like back in the day like tried to sleep with a teenage boy that was on his cast. His defense to it was pretty appalling. He's like, "I'm gay, so don't come after me." And people are like, no. Gay people can do bad things too, you know, like, and so, you know, Kevin Spacey's response is absolutely like horrible, but like it does raise a bigger question, like, you know, like what's the atonement process, you know, in our society, you know, how much good do you have to do to, you know, win forgiveness of your sins, right? Like in religions, like there's a process for this. Like if you're a Catholic, you go into the confessional and confess that you know, did something wrong, and the priest will like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Do this penance, you know, and you go through the penance process, and after that, you know, you feel better because you've made up for it, you know. But Twitter isn't. Twitter is not a person, you know. Twitter is a monster, you know, and so I don't think there's any satisfying that monster. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that, you know, even if you go to, you know, Nepal and help rescue people that have fallen into crevasses on Mount Everest and save 100, like I don't think there's any process through which redemption and atonement and forgiveness can occur on Twitter. You know, and I think that's a problem. You know, like we got the witch hunt, cancel culture, mob mentality down. It's the other side of things that I don't think exists and need to exist, because it's two sides of the same coin. You know? I feel like there's rarely any forgiveness. Yeah, I know. I agree, and I think that's like usually I guess what happens is like an actor or whatever, like you know, it was James Gunn who said some things. You know, Disney fired him from being the Guardians of the Galaxy director, and then the actors that worked for him like threatened to not make the next Guardians of the Galaxy, and so that got him reinstated, I guess. But that's kind of like, you know, kind of like strong arming, you know, the issue, right? People can change that tweet that you posted years ago. You never tweet today, yeah, but you know, acts not words. Yeah, it's true, but like what acts? Like what, you know, what acts do you have to do? Like, you know, if you fly a helicopter to rescue people in Ohio right now that were hit by a tornado, does that make up for saying something bad on Twitter 5 years ago? Like, I don't, like, what's the, you know, like where's the balance? Like, where, you know, what's the equivalent? You know. So some things might have not been a big deal back then, but nowadays it may, and that's also true, right? Like, as our norms change, right? The norms of society change, and so you know, if you look at President Obama and his views on like homosexual marriage, he was quite opposed to it, right? And so it's like, okay, well, you know, it was fairly common to be opposed to, you know, California, which is a very liberal state, you know, passed a proposition banning gay marriage, right, not too long ago. It was like, what, 10, 15 years ago, you know, like norms change, you know, so, you know, at what point do you just be like, all right, that was a long time ago. I don't know. What's the duration? Should all tweets be deleted in 10 years? I don't know. There's YouTubers who get copying pedophiles. They don't deserve to be on YouTubers anymore. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like with Harvey Weinstein or like Bill Cosby. Yeah, you know, but like I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting question, and I think it's one that we need to have as a society. You know, because right now we don't have anything. We have just attacking. You know, no redemption. So that leads us into our talk of ad hominem. So ad hominem is when you make an attack on a person. Okay. A lot of people think that ad hominem is like when you say you're stupid, or like, you know, you're ignorant. You should go back to college. That's not actually what an ad hominem is. An ad hominem is when you say somebody's argument is wrong. Somebody's argument is wrong because of who they are. Okay. So, for example, if James Gunn, director of the Guardians of the Galaxy series, said 2 + 2 is 4, and you said, no, that's wrong because you made a bad tweet 15 years ago, that's ad hominem. Do you understand the difference? So ad hominem is not, it's not like being mean to people, right? Ad hominem is when you say somebody's argument is wrong by attacking the person and not the argument, right? So it's very common to do what's called a reductio ad Hitlerum, which means you just compare the other person to Hitler as a way of negating their argument. So, for example, if a person says that we should all be vegetarians, and somebody says, you know, who else was vegetarian? Hitler. Because Hitler was for gun control, animal rights, vegetarianism. Like, there a lot of like very classical kind of hippie, left-wing views Hitler had. And so a lot of people on the right try to discredit people on the left by saying, you know, who else was supporting gun control? Hitler. And that doesn't make gun control right or wrong, right? When you're talking about gun control, you need to debate on the facts and the evidence and reason from premises to conclusions and things like that. Whether or not Hitler was for gun control is irrelevant. And when you're comparing another person to gun control, another person who's for gun control to Hitler, that's an ad hominem. Because you're not attacking their argument, you're attacking the person. Okay? So, person A, socialism is a dangerous political and economic system that leads to tyranny. And, yeah, so on the first case, we have a right-wing person making an ad hominem, and the second one, we have a left-wing person making an ad hominem. And so, person B says, that's something only a reactionary fascist bougie would say, right? And unfortunately, this is all too common in socialists on the internet. When they don't have a argument, they simply just accuse somebody of being a reactionary, as if that negates their argument, which it doesn't. Okay. Do y'all understand? So ad hominem is when you attack the person and not attack their argument. Okay. Even if Hitler said 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 4. I'm sorry, it's still true. So. Any questions about this? Nope. Waiting for the ad hominems. You supported Hitler. You said he was right about 2 + 2 = 4. No, they're true things, and it doesn't matter if the true thing is said by a good person or a bad person. Let's put it that way. Okay. Yeah. There's a whole series of memes involving like NFL refs, and so they have you can look these up. And so, like, some of my friends will post these, like, on Facebook. Like, if somebody makes a fallacy, they just post, somebody giving you a yellow card or a red card or something like that with the appropriate fallacy that they use. It's quite amusing. We have an ad hominem attack, personal foul, attack the opponent instead of his argument. Okay. Tu quoque is a... tu quoque means you too, basically. Okay? You also. And it's another kind of ad hominem, and so you're not going to see ad hominem and tu quoque on the same question, right? Because it's kind of a variant of it. In the same way, like, you're not going to see false generalization and cherry picking on the same question, because cherry picking is a form of false generalization, right? And moving goalposts and no true Scotsman won't be on the same question because they're related to each other. Okay, So when I put together these, and I know some people's comments on Discord were like, I have trouble keeping these all separate. Be aware, I will not put two fallacies that are close to each other on the same question, right? So if you have like a no true Scotsman, well, what about Angus? He's a Scotsman. Well, he's not a truce. I wouldn't have either moving goalposts or false generalization on that one, because all Scotsmen eat kippers is a false generalization. And then when they say, well, what about Angus? Well, Angus is an etrusc. That's a moving goalpost. So I would have like affirming the consequent, which it absolutely is not. Or like I don't know, equivocation, or you know what I mean. Like I would have like completely unrelated fallacies. Whenever I do a fallacy multiple choice question, I try to make sure there's no ambiguity in the issue. Okay, so tu quoque is a form of that hominem saying, hey, you do it too. So like imagine, your friend saying to you, hey, you shouldn't eat that ice cream, it'll make you fat. And then you respond by saying, well, you eat ice cream also. That's tu quoque, in a nutshell. We've all done it, right? Has anyone here not done it? Because I would like to meet you, You guys on chat, tell me a time where, or maybe somebody said it to you, hey, you should do your homework. You're watching TV, you're not doing your homework, you know what I mean? The pot calling the kettle black. Give me an example on Discord of when you've seen or heard tu quoque used in real life. Too many times to count, yeah, fair enough. So, the communist countries, USSR, but the PRC does it also, have this thing where like America would accuse them of civil rights violations, right? Like sending people straight to gulag, that kind of stuff. And the USSR would respond like, yeah, but you have problems with racism in the South, which was absolutely true. They're like, if you've never looked up the lynchings and things like that in the South, like it was horrible. It's absolutely horrible. If you're too happy and you want to be depressed, look up the whole lynching phenomenon. And the USSR was absolutely true, saying, the US has a problem with civil rights itself. The thing is, that doesn't excuse sending people straight to gulag. You know what I mean? They're just both bad, right? So tu quoque is like an appeal to hypocrisy. But it doesn't mean the argument's wrong. Like, if you say you shouldn't be sending people straight to gulag, that's not negated by the fact that America had like some pretty severe problems going on at the time. Like, it doesn't negate it. They're just both bad, right? So, basically, tu quoque was another way of saying no you. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's all it is. It's like, but it doesn't mean the argument's wrong, right? You should do your homework, but you're not doing your homework. It doesn't mean they're wrong. I probably should be doing my homework. I'm just appealing to hypocrisy. Tu quoque? Yeah. That's funny. Does that make sense? That one's usually pretty easy to pick up. The gulag is kind of better. Man, I don't know. I don't want to try and assess the absolute bottom of humanity. It will plunge me back into depression. Like if you want, or the killing fields in Cambodia. Like, oh Lord. If you are happy and you don't want to be happy. Oof. Yeah. Okay. On a more cheerful note, let's talk about appeal to ignorance. So appeal to ignorance happens a lot in the ignorant, but the actual meaning of appeal to ignorance, let's just start with that, is when you say, I don't know why something happens, therefore you conclude something from it. So for example, I don't know who stole my muffin out of the shared fridge at work, so I know it was Sarah. You know what I mean? Like, the, I don't know who ate the food on my back porch, so it must be Bigfoot. I don't know what caused the universe, so it must be God. I don't know what caused the universe, so it must not be God. Like, anytime you say, I don't know why X, therefore Y, that's an appeal to ignorance. It is an invalid form of argumentation. If you don't know why something happens, you cannot conclude anything from it. Okay? The only thing you can conclude from it is that you have no freaking idea. Okay? So it's just making an assumption. Yeah, it's just completely invalid reasoning, right? And you'll see it sometimes in like the state of consciousness. So we don't know why or how consciousness comes about. Okay, we have all sorts of neuroscience research on brain activity and the brain activity in the brain that leads to conscious states. We don't actually know what consciousness is. We only know about the neural correlates of consciousness. We know that if these neurons are activating in a certain pattern, the person's asleep. If this part of the brain is being activated, they're experiencing pain. The C bundle fibers, if they're activating, you're experiencing pain. But we don't actually know what causes the feeling of pain, right? We can tell if somebody is currently smelling chocolate by seeing if the neurons associated with smelling chocolate are activated, but we don't actually know how, like imagine you're smelling chocolate right now, right? You know, that's not a voltage fluctuation in a neuron. Like there's actually a subjective experience of chocolate. We have no idea what causes it or how it comes about or anything like that. It's one of the deepest mysteries in science is how subjective experience, how does subjective experience arise in a physical universe? I actually have a book on the topic, which I can bore you to tears with if you want. Like it's a real problem. Like how do you have subjective experience in an objective universe? Like it seems impossible, but yet here we are. I can smell the cinnamon on my fog breaker. Right? So I'm pretty sure your example of we don't know why the universe was created, therefore God did it was in the Ken Ham debate. Yeah, it's very common, right? If science doesn't have an explanation for something, then it must be God, and no, it doesn't work. Likewise, it goes the other way. Like atheists will often say, "I don't understand why God would allow evil to happen, therefore God doesn't exist." Also an appeal to ignorance. In fact, William Rowe, who was who wrote the most famous paper on the problem of evil, called the evidential problem of evil, which argues on the balance of the evidence that God doesn't exist because he doesn't understand why God would allow evil to happen, right? And that's just it's an appeal to ignorance. Like literally, it's just a worthless argument. I don't know why you would allow it. So God's not right. Can't. Sorry, invalid. Okay. There's a paradox about this. Yeah. The problem of evil is considered a paradox by some. Kind of reminds me of the book The Giver. Yeah, that was a good book. Didn't they make a movie on that a while back? So, the thing to be careful of with appeal to ignorance is this. A lot of students, anytime somebody makes an ignorant statement, like, squares are round, they'll mark it as an appeal to ignorance. No, that's not what it means. Appeal to ignorance doesn't mean the person making the argument stupid or something, right? Appeal to ignorance means I don't know why something happened and then conclude something from it, right? I don't know why squares have four sides, therefore it's a circle. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's the form of an appeal to ignorance fallacy. I don't know why X, therefore Y. All right, correlation is causation. This is a fantastic fallacy. Fantastic fallacy. It happens all the time in science, and a lot of science is trying to determine whether or not there's an actual thing going on or not. And so this is actually really important, especially if you're going to go into science. But it happens all the time just in real life also. This is one of the most common fallacies you will see ever. Okay? And so correlation is causation fallacy is when two variables fluctuate with each other, and therefore you assume that one of them causes the other, whereas it could just be coincidence, right? So this website here is hilarious. So for example, it correlates the U.S. spending on STEM versus number of suicides by hanging, and you can see they go up pretty well. Together, they've got a 99.8% correlation with an R value of 0.99. In science, this would be considered an incredibly strong result. that the more we spend on science, the more people kill themselves. The number of people who drown by falling into a pool is correlated with Nicolas Cage appearing in movies. With it, again, that's not as strong as before, but 0.66 is strong enough that people will be like, yeah, that Nicolas Cage is probably causing people to die by drowning in a pool. And so you can see here the number of films Nicolas Cage appears in per year, which is actually pretty amazing if you look at it. Like 4 films in 1 year, like that's surprisingly good. Well done, Nicolas Cage. Anyhow, so here you have Nicolas Cage movies and deaths by drowning in a pool. And if you publish this with an R value of 0.66, like that would be considered a strong finding, right? And so in psych research and things like that, they'll do something like give people a crossword puzzle, and on the crossword, the words they solve are all related to age, like arthritis and like limping and like pains in your neck and geriatric and words like that, old, ancient. And then after the crossword puzzles turned in, the people walk down a corridor to leave, and they time them, and they time how long it takes the person to walk down the corridor. And what they found is that when they give people a crossword with words like youth and sprint and agility and vigor and things like that, they tend to walk out the corridor faster. And if they give them words related to age and decrepitude and things like that, they walk out the corridor slower. And so when they publish the results, they'll publish what's called an R value, which shows the strength of the correlation between the two variables. And this is called priming in psychology. And the thing is, like, whether or not that's actually real, I don't know. Right? So, priming is a phenomenon in which one stimulus influences a response to a subsequent stimulus without conscious awareness of it. So, the fact that the recent studies have failed to replicate it, right? Including age priming, which is what I was talking about. So, you got to be careful, right? Just because two things correlate with each other doesn't mean they cause each other. So the most famous example of this comes about from the polio crisis back in the day. Let's do a couple more of these. Per capita cheese consumption correlates quite very strongly, actually, with the number of people who die by becoming tangled in their bed sheets. The divorce rate in Maine, the lower the divorce rate in Maine, then the lower the per capita consumption of margarine becomes. And obviously these two things are just unrelated, right? Like they're just completely unrelated things, but you can see they correlate well with each other. And so the correlation is causation fallacy is this. If we could get less people divorcing in Maine, then we can drop the number of people in America eating margarine. That's the correlation is causation fallacy. Or controls. If we can just get people to eat less margarine, then the divorce rate in Maine will go down. Also, correlation is causation fallacy. Okay? Age of Miss America, Murders by Steam, total revenue generated by arcades, computer science doctorates awarded. Now that one, who knows? Worldwide non-commercial space launches versus sociology doctorates awarded. Per capita consumption of mozzarella cheese versus civil engineering doctorates, things like that. Okay. So, more margarine means more divorce, new study finds. Yeah, and that's the absolute state of science reporting. Right? A science journalist would see that study linking the divorce rate in Maine to margarine consumption and says, scientists have discovered that if... And that's unfortunately how science journalism works these days. Scientists have proven the margarine causes divorce. Switch to butter now. So much of science journalism is this fallacy. Okay? So much. It's and in science itself, like, people publish the correlation values. Like it's, sometimes all you can do is a correlation study. Not always can you establish causation. And so if two numbers correlate with each other, then a lot of times people just kind of assume they cause each other. Okay. This gives off the bottom of a wedge page browser vibes with stories that make no sense. Yeah, like those clickbait headlines they have. Yeah. But okay, so the most famous example of this was during the polio crisis. And what they found was that the incidence of polio correlated with the number of kids that are going to swimming pools. Okay. And so they shut down swimming pools because they looked at the two numbers going with each other. You know, the more people go to swim, the more kids go to swimming pools, the more kids get polio. Therefore, let's shut down the swimming pools so that they don't get polio. And they also discovered that polio and ice cream consumption fluctuated with each other. When people ate more ice cream, they got more polio, and so there was this panic. And scientists said ice cream causes polio. Don't eat ice cream, or your kids are going to get polio. And what actually was happening was that polio rates went up in the summertime. What else? What else happens in the summertime? So, pools, yeah. People eat more ice cream in the summertime, right? So warmer weather caused incidences of polio to rise. Warmer weather also causes people to swim more. Yeah, you're right. Warmer weather causes people to eat more ice cream, and so these three variables are all fluctuating with each other, but none of it was causative. Polio was not causing ice cream consumption to go up. Ice cream consumption was not causing polio to go up. Polio was not causing people to swim more, and swimming more wasn't causing more polio. They were just coincidence that they were fluctuating together. And they were all caused by summer, right? Just in summertime, you know, it gets hotter and kids go out and get exposed to polio more and stuff like that. So at Fannie Mae, a friend of mine there who just died 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, very tragic. He's 37 years old. One of my favorite things was every Christmas getting together with him, and he would tell me stories about Fannie Mae. It's the world's largest, like the country's largest corporation, if you didn't know that, by assets. So at Fannie Mae, they believe that if you can put more people into homes, their income will go up. Because people who own homes, on average, have a higher income. Discuss. Like legitimately, like they put this into like reports to Congress, right? Like we need to get more Americans into houses, owning houses, right? Like we want more Americans owning houses because on average, people who own houses have a higher income, and therefore if we can get more people into houses, the income will rise. Discuss on Discord. What's the problem with that reasoning? If you're watching the recording, post on Discord. What's the problem with this reasoning? And they make this non-ironically. They make this non-ironically. Putting people into houses won't suddenly make their income go up, but they're correlated, Emily. Right? Like, you know, high income correlates well with owning a house. So if we just get more people into houses, then their income will rise somehow. It's correlated. Therefore, it causes it. But they aren't really. It doesn't matter. It doesn't stop Fannie Mae from sending that in reports to Congress. They need the income before they can get in the house. Yeah, that's exactly it, Jason. Right? Is that people who have lots of money to spend tend to buy a house, right? Like if you have $100,000 burning a hole in your pocket, are you going to keep renting a 2-bedroom apartment, or you're going to buy a single family home? You got $100,000 down payment, and there you go, right? So higher income does cause people to buy a house, but it's not the other way around, even though they're correlated, right? And so at Fannie Mae, if X and Y are correlated, X causes Y, and Y causes X. That's just their company policy, right? So it's not a two-way street. Their income won't go up just because they have a house. House is a byproduct of higher income. Yeah. Putting people in houses does not cause income to miraculously increase. Yeah, but I don't know if you all remember the housing crisis in 2008, 2009, where the U.S. economy exploded due to what? Why did it explode? Oh, because we took lots of people who couldn't afford houses and put them into houses they couldn't afford. Like, this is not like some hypothetical, like, oh, I'm just taking this CSI 1 general ed class. This fallacy right here crashed the world economy. Because it wasn't just America. It crashed the world's economy. Because we were putting people who couldn't afford houses into houses. And we told people the price of houses only go up. They never go down. It's a safe bet. Even if you can't afford it, take an interest-only loan, variable rate, interest-only loan, and when the value of the house goes up, you can just sell it and you just made money. And so let's get all these people that can't afford their housing payments into houses, and that pushed the housing market up higher because people are buying houses. And then when interest rates went up, people all of a sudden couldn't afford the houses that they bought because they didn't have the income for it. And so they lost their houses. And what happened was all of these mortgage-backed securities, which is what they're called, basically they would turn people's loans into these like monetary instruments. And they were considered AAA's safest investment. Real estate's the safest investment in the world because nobody ever walks away from a house, or if it does, is very rare. And what happened was all of these people, suddenly their houses were underwater because the housing market started going down. The house had negative net worth now. They hadn't put any equity into it because it was just interest only. And so they started walking away from their house, and that caused the housing prices to crash further. Then more people walked away from the houses. 2 doors down from me was a house owned by a pair of doctors. They walked away from their house. Why? Because the house value had dropped so much, even with their down payment and their equity payments into the house, it was still underwater. And so they just left. They abandoned it. And the bank took it over and tried finding anybody to buy it, and nobody wanted to buy it because the housing market was going like this, right? Nobody wanted to buy a house when the housing prices are dropping so quickly. And so the house just sat there abandoned for a year. They finally got a parolee to take the house. And so every week I'd come home and there'd be a cop car in front of my house, and the parole officer would be talking to this 18-year-old kid whose dog pooped on my lawn. And the kid paid for the house because the house was furnished by selling the appliances out of the house. So like every week, every month or so, I'd come back and there'd be a truck and he'd be hauling out the fridge, So he'd sell off the fridge and use the money from the fridge to pay the monthly rent on the house, and he would sell the table the next month and the toilet or TV or whatever. He basically stripped the house down to like absolutely nothing. And then after he ran out of stuff to sell, he just walked away from the house. And now the bank had a house that was before furnished, now completely stripped bare, and there's poop everywhere from his dog and everywhere. And yeah, and so it like this fallacy right here destroyed the world's economy, right? Because they believed that mortgages were safe, because they had been safe in the past, and they believed that if we could just get more people into houses, their incomes will go up. Turns out that's not the case. Turns out sometimes people can't afford a house, right? And if you can't afford a house, then what happens when the interest rates go up? You walk away from the house, it crashes, creates a snowball effect, takes out the entire world economy. Iceland as a country went bankrupt. It was a massive problem. 2008, 2009, 2010. Okay. A lot of my friends lost jobs because just the global economic depression that came about as a result of this. This is not like some trivial haha, like Nicolas Cage movies. No, it's actually really, really serious. And like I said, in science, a big part of science is trying to figure out, okay, you got these two variables that do fluctuate with each other. Do we know if they actually cause each other, right? Like vitamin D levels are correlated with a lower COVID severity, right? We've known this for a while now. But does it cause lower COVID severity? Right? And that's a question. I've been meaning to read a recent study that came out that does suggest it is causative, but it's been 2 years, right? And then people have been studying this because it could be the case that COVID causes low vitamin D levels, or people who are really sick tend to, you know what I mean? Like, it's actually a really hard thing to figure out if these two things that fluctuate with each other actually cause each other, or if it's just coincidence, or if there's a third underlying cause that is causing both of them, and things like that. Okay, rant off on that. In science, this is the big one to look out for, and also in news reporting, and just like I said, in general life. Anytime two things seem to correlate with each other, we tend to just kind of assume they cause each other. It's kind of a weakness in the human brain. Any comments on this? Have you seen any examples of this in your life? It's not like Fannie Mae is like a small company or anything. Nobody? Nobody has any examples of correlation as causation fallacy? Oh. I know you've had to have seen some. If you do X more, you'll get more Y. Nothing? All right. Ipse Dixit is bare assertion. So we talked about this in my troll video from last Wednesday. The Ipse Dixit is when you just make a claim, but you don't provide any evidence for it. Okay? It's just on. It means on my say so is what Ipse Dixit means. It means just believe me, bro. You know. The Gibson guitar is the best guitar in the world. Believe me. Yeah, just believe me. And if you don't provide any evidence for it other than just, you know, I'm just saying it, it's called a bare assertion or a naked assertion or Ipse Dixit. Okay. And so it's actually technically worse than ad populum or ad verecundium, because you don't have any evidence at all, right? At least with ad verecundium, like you can say, like, look, my doctor told me that coffee causes your intelligence to go up, right? At least that's something, right? Like we can dig into. With Ipse Dixit, I would just be like, yeah, coffee makes you smarter. Believe me, bro. Very popular on the internet, right? Those people just make claims they don't support with any evidence. Ipse Dixit. Okay. Like you just have a belief, but you don't have any evidence for it. A guy told me yesterday, Christianity caused the Dark Ages. Okay. For one thing, there's kind of no such thing as the Dark Ages, and B, the Dark Ages, if you want to call them that, were caused by the collapse of Rome, which really wasn't Christianity's fault, although some people, I guess, think that Christianity weakened the Roman Empire. He made no argument whatsoever. He just kind of threw that out there. Everybody knows, kind of thing. Like, he didn't even say everybody knows. He's just like, Christianity caused the Dark Age. You know, ignoring the fact that in the early middle period, you know, the Catholic Church was the primary source of literacy and knowledge and preservation of libraries and things like that as well. And very common. Just people will just make a claim and refuse to support with any evidence. Or worse, they'll get mad if you ask them for a citation or ask them for evidence and things like that. Source, trust me. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, if the sources trust me, Ipse Dixit. Okay. Handwaving is when they provide sort of a source, but not really. Like, it's the source is like, look it up yourself. You know, like you're wrong, but showing you why you're wrong would take too long, so I'm not going to. Go look it up on Wikipedia. You know, if the guy had told me, you know, The Dark Ages were caused by Christianity. Look it up on Wikipedia. That's hand waving. Like, just go look it up. You know, no. You need to give me like which Wikipedia page, like what website do you want me to read on this topic. You know, hand waving is when you just give this really vague, like, you know, just look it up. Yeah. The proof of this is left as an exercise to the reader. Yeah. 100% of the essays you write in college, yeah. A lot of it's a lot of teaching is Ipse Dixit. Think about it. If you go into your geography class or whatever, and the teacher tells you that China borders Kazakhstan, you typically believe them, right? Like, okay, write it down. China borders Kazakhstan. Does China border Kazakhstan? Does anyone know? Anyone here taking a geography class? Right? That's the point that I was trying to make, by the way, about this when it came to the color of my t-shirt. Right? Source, me. What's the color of my shirt? Me. And it was, you know, and I was arguing against your own eyes. Like, you can actually see, you have evidence what color my shirt is. And I'm just making an Ipse Dixit because students are so used to just believing everything their teachers say. It's a critical thinking class. I don't want you to believe everything I say. Right? I want you to think about it. Nobody's looking up because nobody knows? All right. So now, let me show you the opposite of Ipse Dixit. Right? Let's try and find some evidence. Does China touch Kazakhstan? Let's find out. Let's fly across the ocean. There's China. There's Kazakhstan. Looks like Mongolia. There is, yep, right there. Right? There's the border. Okay. That's presenting evidence. That's not Ipse Dixit anymore. Right? So if you just say, bro, believe me, that's Ipse Dixit. If the person presents evidence, then it's not. Okay? You understand? Teachers love Ipse Dixit. And students, by default, just believe everything the teacher says. Okay. You told me. Any questions about that? Hand waving. China borders Kazakhstan. Go look it up. Okay, so that's basically it for fallacies. What I want you to do for your next assignment is I want you to do a fallacy hunt. So I have a bunch of websites. You don't need to log in on them. There is Debate Religion on Reddit. And you don't have to use Reddit, by the way. I just have 4 Reddit subreddits pulled up. You use Twitter, you use Facebook, anything you want, any social media site. And I understand that some people don't use social media sites, but just keep in mind you don't have to log in, you don't have to create an account. All you have to do is just scroll through the post here and look for people making arguments that have a fallacy in them. Okay, and so it's going to be your job to look. I haven't even seen this question, such as why did you choose this, or why do you want to work for a company? Will not tell you anything. In fact, you will most likely hear something that will stroke the company's ego, but is not true. When I'm on interviews, this question I always lie at. Okay, and so this is probably a false generalization, right? It will not tell you anything. I always lie at. I always say they're my first choice. Okay. Truth is, people seek jobs for income, less stress. Okay. So, what I want you to do is I want you to find a, and it takes literally that long. You can probably find people are getting fired for supporting the Ukraine invasion. Sure, as long as you also support employers being able to fire people for anything they say, including Biden, Trump, Jesus, MLK, etc., because that's what the mechanism would allow. So they're doing a false equivalency or something like that here. So all you have to do is just go on to Reddit, and I'll post these different links. Our politics is absolutely horrible, and it doesn't have to be the top level thing. You can click on the comments section and find people making let's see if we find here. Totally agree with you, but even one of Trump's bargain basement lawyers can easily shock. Let's see. You think it'd be tough to argue the one singer, and you'd probably brag that no. Smart. The average person has more consequences from a speeding ticket. Yeah, so you can easily find fallacies on debate religion or politics. Change my view. Enlightened centrism is especially horrible. If you can start with Nazis, you're a Nazi. Every right winger is a Nazi. Every leftist is a tanky. Those who, yeah. So, tankies are terms for left-wing people who support, like, the Soviet Union sending tanks into Eastern Europe to subjugate it. Cult VOC is just as bad as MAGA. I don't understand. Okay, so I'll post these links, and you can also use your own Twitter, Facebook, things like that. And what you'll do is you will go onto the new discussion forum, and you will post the argument as yourself. I would like for you to actually plagiarize this. You have my permission to plagiarize. I want it to be coming from you. Here is my argument, okay? And then when you get your peer review, and this should not take long, by the way. You should be able to find somebody making a fallacy within 30 seconds, right? It's not hard. But I want you to copy and paste it. I give you full permission to plagiarize your argument. Copy and paste it as your own. It should hurt you a little bit on the inside to make it, but it's kind of the point. And then when you get your peer reviews, the peer reviews will say, like, will identify which fallacy you're making, and then you respond to them and say what your actual fallacy was. And so it's kind of a game to find a fallacy, and then when you're the peer reviewer, identify the fallacy, and then find out if you're right. Okay? And so basically, as long as you do this, you're going to get 100% on it. Like, it should hurt your soul a little bit to, like, be posting a fallacy, and but that's kind of the point, right? And so it'll help develop those synapses in your brain to identify fallacies and so on, because social media is rife with them. They are so incredibly common. Okay, it doesn't even have to be social media technically. Like, you can easily go onto any science journalism website and find somebody doing correlation as causation. Okay. Facebook comic section, yeah, anything. But I want you to copy it and paste it as your own. So like if there's no context to it, you might need to, like, post the context. You know what I mean? Like if you just, like, no, you're wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you might need to, like, have some context on it as well. But basically, yeah, just find something fallacious, post it. It's like a scavenger hunt or a treasure hunt, right? So you're putting a fallacy up there, and then your peer reviewers will try to guess, what the fallacy is, and then you just respond to it and be like, yeah, you're right, or no, I was actually going for No True Scotsman, or whatever. Okay, it'll just give you. It's just a fun activity. It's not really going to be. It's just participation. Like, as long as you do it, you'll get 100%. It's not designed to really, explode your grades or anything like that. Okay. Makes sense. Should be fun. Maybe a little painful, but fun. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's the absolute state of social media these days. So just, yeah, if you have trouble finding a fallacy, I'm going to post, like I said, those different links to different subreddits, and you should be able to find something on there. You don't need to log in. You don't need to make an account. Just scroll through it. It takes all of a minute probably to find it. All right, so I will see you all on Wednesday. If you need help with the Space Invaders assignment, that is due on Friday. Just post your screenshots. Don't worry about plagiarism on the Space Invaders assignment. Feel free to post entire code blocks. It's fine, because I've literally given you websites that have complete instructions on it anyway, so it's not like, I'm going to worry about plagiarism for this assignment. So just feel free to post any screenshot you want in the help section. Ask for help and get it all done by Friday. Okay. See you all on Wednesday. Peace and stay safe.